In ancient Japan, land of the rising sun, there is something new under the sun. 60 miles north of the bustling metropolis of Tokyo, near quiet Motegi town, stands a shining new example of the distinctly American form of racetrack, the oval, twin ring Motegi. The Japanese fans have turned out by the thousands for their first up-close look at the world's fastest circuit racers. Michael Andretti, winner of the opening round of the 1998 FedEx Championship Series, is among the favorites, and the green flag is moments away at the inaugural Budweiser 500. The FedEx Championship Series presents the inaugural Budweiser 500 on a blue sky day at Twin Ring Motegi. Hello everyone, I'm Bob Varsha. Weather has been a big part of the story this weekend in Japan. With more on that, here's Jack Arute.
Bob, rain yesterday washed out qualifying, so the teams relied on their practice times from the day before, and that was good news for our pole sitter and our outside pole sitter. Now, Jimmy Vasser, no surprise that he's qualified on the pole. He had very fast times, not only in practice, but also in extensive testing here at Twin Ring Motegi. But on the outside of the front row, a big surprise. Young Adrian Fernandez has taken his Pat Patrick prepared machine to the outside of the front row. Now, they're going to try something a little different today. Rather than having the normal 3 high gears that you would have in an oval car race, what they have done is selected a different gear setting for 4th gear. Why? They feel that it's going to be necessary in heavy traffic to be able to downshift going into turn number 3, and Adrian Fernandez should then in turn have an advantage and be able to start, initiate, and complete a pass for position before they exit turn 4. Gary?
Well, Jack, one of those teams that elected to work on race day setup as opposed to a qualifying setup was the Newman Haas team and Michael Andretti. As a consequence, he starts this event in 14th position outside in row 7. But keep in mind, as winner of the season opener at Homestead, he started from back in the pack there as well. It was outside row 4 from the number 8 spot. He's hoping he can duplicate that, of course, today. One other interesting note from row 3, Greg Moore, the only wall-banging incident of the weekend, and it was huge late Thursday afternoon. Consider this. His car was devastated. His knees jerked back, and if you look over here, you can see how straight the steering wheel normally is. But over here, it is pushed back a full inch from the huge impact as his knees jerked backwards, tore off the bottom of the dash. Amazingly, he was not injured. He's bruised. He's wearing knee pads today. He's extremely sore. He rode off the car, but the car he's in now is the same car that he drove at Miami to a 2nd place finish, just a matter of feet right behind Michael Andretti.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We have many stories to tell you about on this historic day for open-wheeled racing worldwide. We'll be back in a moment. First, let's go to our Wide World of Sports studio in New York and our host, John Saunders. The field is on track, but Christian Fittipaldi is pitting before the green flag ever waves. Here at Twin Ring Motegi, they replace the left front tire, and the Brazilian is back underway. Here's a look at our starting lineup. On the pole, for the 5th time in his career, Jimmy Vasser starting alongside Adrian Fernandez, equaling his best starting position ever. Row 2, Gilles de Ferran and reigning series champion Alex Zanardi. On row 3 will be Greg Moore, who had that heavy crash on Thursday. He's in a backup car, and Scotsman Dario Franchitti. Row 4, Mark Blundell and Andre Ribeiro. On row 5 will be Brian Herta, 5th fastest in the morning warm-up, and Tony Kanaan, once again the highest starting rookie in the field. Row 6 will be Mauricio Gugelmin and Scott Pruitt. On row 7, Walter Salas, replacing the injured Dennis Vitolo, and Michael Andretti, the winner of the season opener in Miami, Florida 2 weeks ago. Row 8, Al Unser Jr. and Paul Tracy, 2 veterans at mid-pack. Row 9 will be Bobby Rahal in his only Motegi start as his last season in the series continues. He'll be next to rookie J.J. Leto. On row 10, Christian Fittipaldi, who just made that quick stop, and Patrick Carpentier. On row 11, Richie Hearn and Brazilian Roberto Moreno. Back on row 12, Max Pappas and Michel Jourdain Jr. On row 13, Japanese driver Hideshi Matsuda, great story there, and Helio Castroneves, one of the rookies in the field. Row 14 will be Arndt Meyer in the only Lola chassis out there, and Alex Barron from California. And on the final row, 15, PJ Jones and Hiro Matsushita. Our race is scheduled for 201 laps. With me, a man who has raced often in Japan, Danny Sullivan. Danny, the racers love this new track.
Well, it's the state of the art. It's very smooth. They built an incredible place. As you can see, it's very hilly right here. And what they did, they cut the top off of the mountains. They built this incredible 1.5 mile track. And as you can see in the right of your screen, lower right, that's the turns 1 and 2 very fast. They're taking it almost wide open. Turns 3 and 4 very tight. They're actually downshifting there into that corner. We're going to see a lot of passing in that area.
The field now coming up to speed. The front row getting a good jump on row 2. We'll see if they give them the green this time around. They do. Jimmy Vasser and Adrian Fernandez lead the field away in the inaugural Budweiser 500. The field is cleanly through turns 1 and 2. By far the faster sequence of corners, nearly flat out through there. And Adrian Fernandez has lit the fuse, and he is riding a rocket. He's already opened up a big gap on Vasser. To the line they come to end lap 1. It is Fernandez, Vasser, Gilles de Ferran, and Alex Zanardi, your top 4. The turns banked at 10 degrees, a very fast track. The pole speed some 217 miles an hour. As you look at Adrian Fernandez, he equaled his best starting position since the US 500 at Michigan 2 years ago.
Bob, there's a lot of questions here because of the practice situation. It was rained out on Friday. A lot of them were working on race setups and some of them were working on qualifying setup. So we're going to have to see what they came up with and who shines during this race.
We should also point out that there was very heavy rain on Friday. That's probably greened up this racetrack, washed off a lot of the rubber built up in Thursday practice.
That changes it a little bit, but this track doesn't have a great groove down in it because this is, of course, the first event here, so it doesn't have years of a groove built up. I'm not so sure making it green with that rain on Friday is going to affect these cars that much.
There is Vasser, the series champion 2 seasons ago, running in second place behind the man in the green and orange car, Adrian Fernandez. Then Gilles de Ferran in third. Zanardi in fourth, Greg Moore fifth, Dario Franchitti is sixth. As you see the field streaming across the start-finish line. And Michael Andretti is on the move. He started 14th. He is up to 10th. Across the bottom of your screen, you see the running order with 5 laps complete. The laps go down at about 25 seconds per. So this is going to be a very fast race, and we anticipate a lot of passing.
Let's also point out that these teams and drivers have been out here before testing, so this isn't completely new to them. They didn't just show up here on Wednesday and start turning the wheel and going. They have had some practice experience here. Not everybody, but most of them have been out here before.
14 drivers were here back in November for a group test. Here's a good look at Vasser, running more than a full second now behind the race leader Adrian Fernandez, who was enjoying the lead for the first time since the Toronto Street Course event back in 1996. As you ride with Jimmy Vasser. This is turns 3 and 4, and you can hear him lift.
Now he just lifted. We've heard that a lot of the drivers are actually downshifting here during practice. That's what they've told us. We'll see if that comes into play during the race.
Car's heavy with fuel right now. And as that fuel load lightens, we'll see how they change in their handling. On board with Michael Andretti, who came from 8th place to win 2 weeks ago in the season opener at the Miami-Dade Homestead Motorsports Complex in South Florida. No sign of an upshift there, so Michael Andretti using top gear only at this point. Not since A.J. Foyt in a Coyote Ford back in October of 1978 at Silverstone in England has an American-built chassis won a race. You saw Michael Andretti grab a gear there.
Now he just downshifted there. Now this could be a handling situation or possibly as the fuel load changes and you heard him just upshift there.
Back to the lead now. Adrian Fernandez continues to draw away from Jimmy Vasser. And he puts a lap on Hiro Matsushita, so we're lapping slower runners within the first 10 laps. There's the running order. We'll be back with more from Japan in a moment. Continues to lead the inaugural Budweiser 500 at the Twin Ring Motegi Circuit near Motegi Town, Japan. Bob Barsha, Danny Sullivan with you. Not since Toronto 2 years ago has this man led a race. He went on to win that event when he was driving for the Tasman team. On board now with Michael Andretti. You see how that onboard camera is already getting oil and rubber.
You see right there, he had to lift off a little bit. He got in close behind the car, and it just took the air away from the front end, just moved it a little bit. Michael had to lift out of it.
Let's check the speeds at the line. Yellow arrowheads tell you who the top 3 cars are. Jimmy Vasser with the quickest lap on that last go-round. Now Brian Herta comes through at 208.7 miles per hour. Compare that with the pole setting speed of Jimmy Vasser at 217.964.
Bob, once again, we heard Vasser downshift into that corner. You hear his throttle there. He's almost wide open all the way through turns 1 and 2.
For the lead. Vasser drives right by Fernandez at a remarkable rate of knots. Are you surprised he made that pass so easily, Danny?
I am a little bit surprised. Adrian had been running well, but I think Adrian got held up a little bit in traffic. Jimmy was almost wide open through the corner, and he just got to run off. We'll have to see if he can stretch it out and pull away from Adrian.
There is Fernandez, driving as a teammate to Scott Pruitt with Pat Patrick Racing in 1998 in the FedEx Championship. Vasser continues to work traffic. Fernandez at the upper right of your screen, being followed very closely now by the 3rd place Reynard Honda of Gilles de Ferran. Our pictures are coming to us from the host broadcaster for this event, NTV in Japan. Vasser right up behind Michel Jourdain in the green car before ducking out of the draft and passing. And de Ferran has gotten by Fernandez, who drops back to 3rd. So the first 2 cars now are Honda powered, and as you might imagine, this is an enormously important race for Honda. In fact, this entire facility is owned by Honda.
Bob, I've got to believe that something's going a little bit wrong with Adrian's car. His balance is going away, some kind of problem. He's dropped too much ground in 2 laps to have it still be perfect the way it is running in the early laps.
Ferran moving forward, back on board with Michael Andretti, passing rookie Tony Kanaan. And that is 4th position. Well, he hasn't passed him yet. Side by side, down into 1 they go. And now Michael Andretti continues his march toward the front. This is the kind of thing we saw from Michael at Homestead 2 weeks ago.
Bob, you got to believe if he had a good car at Homestead, he was more than likely going to have a good car here. Quite similar tracks. Turns 1 and 2 are very similar to Miami. It's a smooth racetrack. They weren't going to lose anything just shipping these cars out to Japan.
Now Andretti challenges the red machine of Alex Zanardi, the reigning series champion, and he passed with ease. I wonder if Zanardi's car is completely healthy. Of course, the questions are all about setup, as you see Michael in 7th place. Goodyear tires working for Andretti. Only 2 Goodyear cars qualified in the top 10. All the rest on Firestone, a part of the Firestone Bridgestone rubber empire. That is a Japanese company, and of course this is a very big race for them as well, with a lot of fans and then guests in the stands. Now you see a lot of empty spaces in the grandstands. This facility will hold over 130,000 people, but at this debut event they have capped the ticket sales at 55,000 in order to ensure that they can handle that crowd. There is Michael's wife, Leslie. The facility is beautiful, as you see Michael Andretti's progress through the field. But access to Twin Ring Motegi is very problematic. There is a 2-lane road, and as you can imagine, it is very congested with the crowds coming in and out of this track. Back to Jimmy Vasser, race leader. Perhaps the most experienced driver at this racetrack. He came here for the ribbon cutting and drove one of the Target Chip Ganassi racing machines around the track for a few ceremonial laps. Then he was back for the group test in November. The upper right of your screen, Helio Castro Neves driving for Tony Bettenhausen. Onto the backstretch goes the race leader, Vassar. Adrian Fernandez sliding further and further back. Across the start-finish line goes Jimmy Vassar. Let's go down to the pit lane to Jack Arute and see if we can learn more about Adrian Fernandez's situation. Jack?
Guys, we've checked with Adrian Fernandez's pit crew, and there is no problem with Fernandez, despite the fact that he's faded back to third position. In fact, this is a little bit by design. He likes the way the car's set up, but he and the crew have determined that it's a long race, and they don't want to press things, at least not at this point.
I don't know, Bob. That's an interesting strategy, and of course Jim McGee's one of the sharper guys out there on that. Obviously they're running these cars so wide open that they want to probably save the equipment. This is a 500-kilometer race, 312 miles, long ways to go, and we'll see if that strategy plays out.
Jimmy Vassar, the race leader in the red car, bottom of your screen. Fernandez has another reason for taking this race fairly conservatively in the middle laps. He was very sick last night. We were told that he was up sick to his stomach through most of the night. He is not well rested, and his stamina also has to be a question today. It is a cool day, so the drivers should be fairly comfortable. But when you've had an upset stomach facing a 500-kilometer race, 312 miles roughly, as Danny mentioned, that is a long day's work. As you see the gap between Vassar and the second-place car of Gilles de Ferran, out to almost 3 seconds. Both the first and second-place cars are Reynard chassis with Honda power. The difference between them, Vassar is on Firestone tires, de Ferran on Goodyears. Now the race leader comes up to put a lap on J.J. Leto, driving for Carl Hogan.
Bob, something that we should mention here is that we've talked about shifting on an oval. Now, normally on an oval track, you just have a top gear in there and you're running around, do a little braking with your left foot and back on the gas. But as we saw with the map of this circuit, it's very fast in 1 and 2, almost wide open, but quite a bit slower, and they have to get on the brakes quite heavy down here in turns 3 and 4. So what they do is they downshift a little, and with the sequential gearbox, it's quite easy to happen.
On board with Alex Zanardi, that's Max Pappas in one of the Toyota-powered entries up ahead, and here comes Tony Kanaan around the outside. That drops the reigning FedEx champion back into 10th spot. Zanardi started 4th. He's going backwards. Zanardi not among those 14 drivers who came here back in November, but he would have important setup information from his teammate, Jimmy Vassar. The two work very well together. Right now, Zanardi not having much luck here at Twin Ring.
Bob, I think that's not a knowledge of the track situation, because this is just a 4-corner oval. But what it is that he's not happy with his setup. He's had enough running here. He knows the track well enough. He just doesn't have the setup that he's comfortable with.
Rumors are swirling that Zanardi, at the end of his contract this year, is headed back to Formula One with Honda power in 1999. Oh, a car on the left headed for the pits. Andre Ribeiro with the Marlboro Penske team, as Alex Zanardi stays on the racetrack. On the left is the pit exit and warm-up lane. The drivers cannot re-enter the racetrack till they get back here. There's Ribeiro headed for the Penske pits. This is a bit early. The crew wandering around. Gary Gerald is down there. Gary, what can you tell us?
Problems for Andre Ribeiro is going to result in a nose wing change You can see that the left front side is drooping. There's been contact, or the side plate has torn away. The spare nose is ready to go into place, but all of this coming under green. Already, the old damaged nose is off. The fresh nose is headed for the front of the car, and the change will be completed in a matter of seconds, but it's got to be so frustrating for Andre Ribeiro.
Ribeiro pitted from 7th place, so he was having another good run.
And Bob, when you pit under a green situation like that on an oval where they're running around here in 25 seconds, you're losing a tremendous amount of ground there. He'll go down a couple laps at least.
Jimmy Vasser, the race leader, picking up $25 a lap for the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. The house charity at Target Chip Ganassi Racing. Clear track in front of him. We'll be back with more of the Budweiser 500 after this message and a word from our ABC stations. The Budweiser 500 continues from Twin Ring Motegi. Jimmy Vasser on the lead, followed by Gilles de Ferran. Ellenzer Jr. has moved all the way up to 5th, and now Vasser heads for the pit lane.
And boy, that was a little close. You see the car, he dove right in front of him. That car was obviously coming out of the pits as he was coming in.
This is the beginning of our fuel window, so we should see lots of pit activity. With the race leader coming in now, I would expect some of the other front-running cars will come in as soon as they can. On the 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit, Vasser heads for the pits. Gary Gerould awaits him.
Race leader Jimmy Vasser being waved into position, hits his marks perfectly. They report the car has been handling beautifully, not anticipating any changes. Routine service, waiting for the full complement of fuel. And Vasser's gone just over 12 seconds.
Like one of the Forsyth cars pitted in front of Jimmy Vasser. Staying below the white line as he accelerates up to speed. Here's Michael Andretti pitting. Quick drink, everything looks routine. Being held. Oh, and now he stopped. Oh, Christian Fittipaldi. Now that was close.
That was close, but that was great pit work because his team obviously looked up and saw Christian coming down, said, stop, hold on, and then let him go.
Gilles de Ferran. He would have assumed the lead on Vasser's pit stop, but he too came around to pit. And now he accelerates back up to speed. On the backstretch, he'll get back up on the racing line. Oh, Zanardi pitting. More traffic in the pits. Gary Gerould.
Alex Zanardi, fastest in the final warm-up session this morning, struggling with a loose handling race car. So we expected, we're now seeing wing changes up front. Already the car is down off the jacks, but the tire completion is made. The fuel is in. He's back out, hoping that it'll handle better.
I think that was Walter Salas in the Peyton Coyne car. Almost touched with Alex Zanardi as Zanardi went for the pits. You also saw Ellenzer Jr. pit and leave as the Target Chip Ganassi Racing crew worked on Alex Zanardi.
Now what Gary said, of course, the car was loose, so they just made a little wing adjustment right there in the front. What they do is they take some front wing out, meaning turn it down, give it a little less downforce on the front to stabilize the car.
Once again, our pictures coming to us from the host broadcaster NTV of Japan. And this is their first visit to this racetrack, as it is for us. Zanardi will try to work his way forward once again. As you see, his teammate Jimmy Vasser continues to lead on board now with Alex Zanardi. And now to Jimmy Vasser. Coming up to pass Hiro Matsushita, one of 2 Japanese drivers in this field. Matsushita will bring his career to a close following the Rio 400 coming up in a few weeks. We also have Hideshi Matsuda in this field, his 3rd ever start in the series. The other 2 were the 1994 and 95 Indianapolis 500s. 1993, Matsuda was a television broadcaster at the Speedway.
And boy, you really got to see the speed differential there as Jimmy dove underneath that car. That's where they go in under braking there. Unbelievable how fast they're moving. Little downshift, and away he goes.
That was Roberto Moreno in the white car that Jimmy Vasser just went by. Patrick Carpentier in the blue and white machine coming up behind race leader Vasser. Carpentier is a lap down. All of the equipment you see here, including that yellow rescue truck, all of the timing and scoring equipment, literally tons of equipment, was brought here on 3 FedEx Jumbo jets early this week. 58 race cars, and each team brought nearly 4 tons, actually nearly 5 tons of extra equipment. A massive logistical operation. You see the gap over 5 seconds from Vasser to Fernandez in second place. Fernandez holding up well, it would appear, despite all that sickness he suffered through last night. Vasser has been the quickest man thus far at this racetrack. In fact, through Thursday's practice, he and his teammate Alex Zanardi. Oh, a big wiggle there.
See that wiggle? Now that's under braking right in there, and that might have been when he grabbed the gear. Let's not forget that what happened with Greg Moore on Thursday in that crash was that he went in there and he downshifted, and he went from 6th instead of to 5th. He actually grabbed second gear, locked up the rear tires, and spun him off into the wall. Of course, with a sequential gearbox, you can do that because it's not the standard H pattern shifter.
That was Carpentier going by, not a pass for position. Jimmy Vasser remains the leader. We'll be back. Michael Andretti as the Budweiser 500 continues at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit in Motegi, Japan, half a world away from the opening round in Florida. Coming up next on ABC Sports, the first major of the LPGA season, the Nabisco Dinah Shore. Laura Davies, Anika Sorenstam, Nancy Lopez, and defending champ Betsy King are in the field. That's next, except on the West Coast, here on ABC. Michael Andretti heading for the tighter turns 3 and 4 here at this unique racing circuit, very much like Darlington International Raceway in South Carolina, or perhaps the Gateway Oval, where we'll be racing in late May on the FedEx Championship Series. 2 very different sets of turns. 1 and 2, very fast, nearly flat out for these cars. 3 and 4, much slower. Drop a gear, do some braking, and dive in. Michael Andretti has marched all the way to second place from his starting position in 14th. Al Unser Jr., his rival for winningest active driver in the series right now, has also moved forward. Little Al, who started 15th, is now 5th.
We saw a move like that with Little Al at Miami. Remember, he moved up through the field, unfortunately had a gearbox failure and put himself out of the point situation.
Checking the speeds at the line. There's the race leader, Jimmy Vasser. Watch for the yellow arrowheads that indicate fastest lap that last time around. Vasser, Andretti, Fernandez, just what you might expect as they run first, second, and third. Now Al Unser Jr. clocks in. He is still quickest at 207.486 miles per hour.
Bob, look at those speeds, though. They're all right in there together. Those top 6 guys, all 207, 206. Now Fernandez dropped down to a 204. That could have actually been a traffic situation where he had to get around a slower car.
Same for Alex Zanardi, running under 200 miles an hour. As you look at Adrian Fernandez, there's Hideshi Matsuda, one of the 2 Japanese drivers we talked about earlier, and Al Unser Jr. going around him.
But cautiously going around him. That's why they'll drop off 2-3 miles an hour from those 207 speeds, just cautiously getting around the outside of a car.
Beautifully smooth racetrack. You can see how wide it is. The drivers, to a man, absolutely love it. There is Richie Hearn, an all-red Budweiser sponsored car. Call it the house car at this event for De La Pena Racing, running in 14th place.
And you see him put his hand down there, just grab that shifter, just push it forward. Don't need the clutch, you just tap the brake, push it forward, and away they go.
This is one of 4 Swift chassis in the field. Brian Herta is one of the early casualties of this race. Jack Arute is there.
Well, Brian, we know a faulty clutch puts you out of the race, but what about the track conditions?
The track conditions are good. You know, we didn't get to run yesterday and it did rain, so it was a little bit slippery. But as the cars are running around, we're getting some more rubber down, and you know, it's a great facility, beautiful place to race, and you know, I'm just disappointed we're not going to be around for the finish.
Are you surprised at the quick pace that everybody's setting today?
Well, not really, because we just haven't had that much time on the track, and so I knew as the more we run, the guys are tuning their cars, getting them better and better for the circuit, and you know, I expect it'll keep getting faster as the race goes on.
Brian Herta, actually the second car out of the race. P.J. Jones has parked his Reynard Toyota for Dan Gurney's All-American Racers as you watch Richie Hearn, as I mentioned, one of 4 Swift chassis in this field. Michael Andretti, Christian Fittipaldi, Hearn, and Hideshi Matsuda. As you see J.J. Leto with the engine cover off in the Hogan pits.
And those guys aren't running around the car. They're kind of just standing there. That looks a little bit more terminal than something that they can fix and get him back out there.
Meanwhile, Jimmy Vasser continues on his way. Working traffic coming up behind Michel Jourdain of Mexico. Driving for Dale Coyne and Walter Payton, former NFL superstar and Hall of Famer. Jourdain, the most improved driver in the series last year, but right now he has the 96 series champion, Jimmy Vasser, filling his mirrors.
And of course, we saw on that leaderboard 2 great names, Andretti and Unser, in the top 4. They've really made a march from the middle of the pack to the front.
Scott Pruitt down low around Jimmy Vasser, trying to make up a lap, and he does it.
And look there, Michael Andretti taking a look at Jimmy Vasser, trying to go up the inside.
Ooh, Paul Tracy in the green and white car, part of that fight as well, although Tracy is a lap down. Looking very racy is Tracy as he pulls in the line ahead of Michael Andretti, who's trying to catch the race leader. Paul Tracy has been struggling with understeer here at Twin Ring, as he was 2 weeks ago in Homestead with Team Green in a Honda-powered Reynard on Firestone tires. Now Michael is safely by him for the moment. And traffic just ahead, holding up Vasser, allowing Michael to close.
Michael's going to get a run off this corner.
Ducks to the inside. Can he get it done? Yes, Michael Andretti moves into the lead. And Paul Tracy taking a look down the inside of Vasser.
Bob, what happens there is you just get held up a little bit by that slower car, and the other guy's able to keep the throttle down. He gets the momentum and the run off the corner. He just pulls up behind him, slipstreams him, and dives down the underside into braking into turn 3.
The points leader coming off that big win 2 weeks ago in South Florida. Michael Andretti is on a roll and hopes to put this American-built Swift chassis in victory lane. It would be the first time in 20 years that an American-built chassis won a series race outside the continental United States. Andretti, Vasser, and Al Unser Jr. up to 3rd, but we've got a long way to go. Inaugural Budweiser 500 on a beautiful day in central Japan. You're watching race leader Michael Andretti seeking his 2nd straight victory in the FedEx Championship for 1998. Coming up behind Scott Pruitt, hoping to put the Visteon-sponsored Reynard a lap down. Look at the speeds for Michael Andretti. His fast lap, 210 miles an hour. That's the fastest we've seen thus far in this race. And now he has to work traffic through all that turbulent air. Behind the outside, you can see how evenly matched he is with the similar Ford XD V8 engine of Scott Pruitt. And Paul Tracy now moving back up again.
That looks close, doesn't it? They were really close in there.
Our pictures once again coming to us from NTV in Japan as you watch Al Unser Jr. having one of his best runs in a long, long time.
Bob, he's up into 2nd place. He's doing an incredible job. Both these guys started well back in the field, mid-pack, and they've come right to the front. 2 great names, Andretti and Unser.
Michael Andretti is 4th in the all-time kart winning ranks with 37 victories, 2 more, and he will tie Al Unser Jr.'s dad, Al Unser Sr., for 3rd place on the all-time win list.
And there's a guy right there, Al Unser Jr., who's got to be feeling pretty good. He had a disastrous season last year, did not get a win at all, He was really not very competitive through the entire season, although he hung in there in the points championship. But look, the first 2 races, he's been pretty racy. He's been right up there at the front, seen a smile on his face, and feels the car is a really good race car.
Just 2 lapped cars between Al Unser Jr. and race leader Michael Andretti. And you can bet little Al can smell that lead. Last year, he not only did not win a race, he did not lead a lap in a series. And for a man with the winning tradition of an Unser, that is a huge setback. Almost 4 wide there.
But look who was diving down the inside was Adrian Fernandez in that bright red and green car. He looks like he's coming back alive a little bit after falling back.
Michael Andretti untroubled on the point. Let's get down to the pit lane and Gary Gerold.
Everything flying perfectly right now as far as Michael Andretti is concerned. He's made that bonsai run with the help of a great pit stop to take the lead. The only problem they're reporting or concern is that he is hitting the rev limiter, but they think it's just being caught up in the draft in traffic from time to time. They're really not too worried. The car's flying.
Of course, what they mean there, Bob, about getting into the rev limiter, there's a rev limit on the cars that's set electronically so that they don't go over the red line as we would know it in our road cars, and that's about 14,000 RPM, and the rev limiter cuts it out. Well, what happens is when you get that draft and they're right up there, it'll pull them a couple hundred RPMs faster and pull it into the rev limiter.
See the gap from race leader Andretti to the second place car of Al Unser Jr. Only Paul Tracy between them, and he is a lap down. We also saw Scott Pruitt in that silver car with the bright yellow helmet. He runs 11th. Paul Tracy is 12th. This amazing new Penske chassis, a radical design from the pen of John Travis, his first in the fabled line of Penske race cars. The most successful team in the history of this series, but Roger Penske still looking for that milestone 100th win.
When you saw Scott Pruitt kind of close down there on Al Jr., that'll make him slow down a little bit. He'll have to back off the throttle there, and that's in turn 1 and 2 where you carry a lot of momentum.
Michael Andretti with Roberto Moreno behind him in that white car. Very similar to the All-American Racers paint scheme. There's Tracy running 12th.
I think Paul Tracy's got to be pretty happy, though. He's running 12th, which isn't where he wants to be, but he looks like he's got a lot more competitive chassis than he did down there in Miami.
15 different chassis, engine, and tire combinations in this race. And the parity is just astonishing. Right now, Michael Andretti appears to have the hot hand with the Ford XD Turbo V8, the Swift chassis, and Goodyear tires. His victory at Homestead ended an 11-race win drought for Goodyear. Firestone swept the last 11 in a row last year before Goodyear won the season opener 2 weeks ago.
And they appear to be a lot more competitive in these first 2 races. We're seeing some Goodyears up at the front, a lot more consistent, and staying with the guys.
There is the top 6. Unser Jr. second, Fernandez in third, followed by DeFerrin, Moore, and Vassar, your top 6. We'll be back. Budweiser 500. Japanese people have been extraordinarily warm in their welcome to our American TV crew and the superstars of the FedEx Championship Series. On the racetrack as the Budweiser 500 continues, Michael Andretti is the race leader, and just behind him, Al Unser Jr. Long time since we've talked about Al Unser Jr. running with a shot at the lead in the FedEx Championship Series. It's been a long drought for the second winningest active driver in the series. And there's Bobby Rahal continuing his final season. They call it Rahal's last ride. Right now he's ridden all the way up to 8th place. His teammate Brian Hurd is out of the race. Team Rahal, one of the few teams that did not come here for the group test back in November. Yet they qualified fairly well. Brian Hurd qualified 9th inside row 5, but he has dropped out of this race with a clutch problem. Bobby Rahal started inside row 9 and is working his way forward.
Here they're just a little lift through turns 1 and 2. Very steady hands with Bobby. Down here to 3-4, a little downshift. Back on the power. squeeze it off there. You don't want to do anything real fast or radical on an oval track. Get it to jump sideways. Just be very smooth.
Checking the Omega timing on Bobby Rahal. Lapping quickly, and Michael Andretti is slowing down. Michael Andretti has a problem. The race leader has slowed down, and that will put Al Unser Jr. into his first race lead. I'll have to check the notes on that. It's been such a long time for little Al. But what heartbreak for Michael Andretti, who was running so strongly.
And look how far he's having to coast. He came off slow off of turn 2, and he's just coasting down. Look, he got past somebody going into the pits.
Oh, the irony is amazing as you watch Michael Andretti. Al Unser Jr.'s last race lead was in 1996 at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, when he lost his engine on the last lap, and the man who passed him to take the race victory was Michael Andretti.
And boy, look how slow Michael's going. And I'm not sure his pit is all the way at the far end of the pits. This is a long pit lane. He's got a ways to go.
Oh, you can be sure Michael is in agony as he creeps down the pit lane. He's obviously lost the fire. He pitted back on lap 46. Could he be out of fuel?
That'd be a little bit early, but it's possible. I don't see any fluids coming out of there, and they haven't thrown a yellow to indicate that there's any fluids out on the track, and I'm sure they look at that very closely. Oh, look at this. He's got a long ways to go. He's at the left of your screen. He's got to go all the way down here. Keep going right down there to the right. Oh, that's a couple hundred yards at least.
Now the kart officials are giving him a push. The pit marshals handing him off like the baton in a relay. And the seconds tick away, and Michael Andretti falls lap after lap behind the new race leader, Al Unser Jr. Now the Newman Haas crew is there to bring Michael Andretti back to the pits and see if they can figure out what went wrong.
Luckily, this pit lane is very wide there. They've got plenty of room. Look at Michael. He's just frustrated, throwing his head forward in anger. I'm sure he's talking on the radio, and I'm sure it's something that we cannot say on the air.
He is nearly to his pits where his crew awaits, along with Gary Gerald.
Well, you couldn't ask for more of a nightmare as far as Michael Andretti is concerned. The crews had to go all the way down pit road. They push him toward his pits now. They believe that there was a electronic miscalculation somehow, that they ran out of fuel. He had blasted his way from 14th starting to the lead, and now he can only shake his head as he finally gets back to refuge in the pits.
Well, they'll fill it up with fuel and see what Michael can do. As Al Unser Jr. now on the race lead, and just behind him, that bright day-glow orange and green machine of Adrian Fernandez is right there.
This is so frustrating. Let me tell you, to run out of fuel, these guys don't make this kind of mistake. You don't miscalculate. It's quite a bit of a miscalculation, at least 10 laps. They don't mess up that, but particularly Newman Haas.
A lot of pit stops going on around Michael Andretti, but he has lost at least half a dozen laps right now.
Now you wonder why he's not going there. See, they had the starter motor down behind the engine. They had to refire the engine. When they're hot, that takes a while. And of course, he did all of this under a green condition. He lost a lot of laps there.
Michael Andretti back in action, but he is at least 6, perhaps 7 laps down. And while Michael was making his way to the pits, we had a change, a pass for the lead. Adrian Fernandez is out front. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. ESPN Round 6 of the NASCAR Winston Cup season. The Food City 500, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific, only on ESPN. Back at the Budweiser 500, race leader Al Unser Jr. is headed for the pits, and that's the first time in 21 races that Al Unser Jr. has been in the race lead. You can bet there is some serious excitement down there in the Penske pits. On the speed limiter, holding him to the 60-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limit, Al Unser Jr. heads for service. Jack Arute awaits him.
As Junior comes to a stop, it will be a 4-tire change, a nominal pit stop, and we will wait to see if there are any suspension changes. Thus far, Al Jr. likes the way his car is running, and now, lo and behold, no chassis changes, and he's away.
And you can see the smiles and the hand clapping going on. This could be the day for Al Unser Jr. and Roger Penske.
And that was from one of the other crew members from the sister car, Andre Ribeiro from Myron. He was up there cheering them on. That shows the team spirit right there at Team Penske.
One of the Target Chip Ganassi racing machines, Alex Zanardi, who has had a troubled race thus far, started well up in the field in the number 4 spot, but he has been going backwards since then, having trouble finding speed in that Reynard Honda. In fact, he is passed by one of the Toyota-powered Reynards. That was Max Pappas in the MCI-sponsored machine from Archiero Wells.
Yeah, you know, Alex has never seemed comfortable this entire race. He's gone backwards from the start. He hasn't been his usual aggressive self in there dicing with everybody. He's obviously got a balance problem on that car.
Checking the fuel windows. The green line tells you how long it's been since the last pit stop. And Adrian Fernandez has extended his green flag run past his fuel window. He'll be in shortly. Fernandez leads Unser Jr.
Well, now that might fit in with, remember what their pit strategy was earlier. They said they didn't want to run that pace. There he is getting a fuel stop this late in the race. That means he could basically go one more stop, and that would be it for till the end of the race. But it plays into the fuel strategy. They probably got the mixture turned down a little bit. He's conserving fuel, running a little slower pace.
Meanwhile, moments ago, we had an incident in the pits. Jack Arute has more on that.
Guys, a left front tire changer for Alex Barron's car on the Dan Gurney stable. Dave Brzezowski was poised and ready to begin his work when Alex Barron brought his car onto pit road. Barron locked up the tires and slid right into Breeze, as he affectionately called. He was tossed a couple of feet in the air. The safety team has come to his aid and has been removed to the Infield Care Center for further evaluation.
All right, thank you, Jack. Scarily reminiscent of the incident with Paul Tracy at Nazareth 2 seasons ago when he locked up the brakes and slid into his crew. We'll update that situation as the race goes on if we can.
Bob, those guys that are in the pit lane are amazing. They sit out there, they kneel down, they work on the car when everybody's screaming in there. Now there's a pit speed limit of 60 miles an hour, but 60 miles an hour is pretty damn fast when you're kneeling down on the ground and somebody's screaming in there.
Yellow flag. Christian Fittipaldi has lost the engine in his Swift. And that yellow sign, the bright day-glow orange sign, I should say, with a big black P, means the pits are closed.
I just want to get back to those guys that are going to be very active here in a couple minutes when these pits get open. But let's talk about those guys. They really have a tough job in the pit lane. They've got to do all this in 10 seconds. It's hot down there. The cars are hot. Fuel's pouring in those cars. It's a very dangerous situation. They have to be very good, and they have to be very fit at what they do.
Hats off to the crewmen, no doubt about it. Under the yellow flag, Roger Penske talking to his crew, perhaps congratulating them on that last pit stop for Al Unser Jr. Christian Fittipaldi has lost the engine. There he is, a 4th place finisher in the season opener at Homestead. He's had an interesting trip here to Motegi, Japan. He started out from Homestead, flew off to Europe for some sponsor activities, flew on eastward to Japan. He will leave from here to go to next week's event at Long Beach, California, then perhaps home to Brazil, a complete round-the-world tour for Christian. Another look.
That is a major blow-up. When you're getting that kind of smoke out of there, that is unbelievable. That's reminiscent of some of my old Alpha blow up at Indianapolis.
Smoke from all the way down in turn 2. That may have laid fluid down on the racetrack. This could be an extended yellow flag for cleanup. Dr. Steve Olvey checking with Fittipaldi. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Well, a nightmarish afternoon thus far for Michael Andretti. It started so promising. He said that car was absolutely flying. In fact, he radioed to Ed Nathman just moments ago that he said we could have lapped the field. The car was that good. Nathman's reply, okay, let's go lap the field 5 times, because he's down 5 laps right now at the halfway point of this competition.
How quickly things can turn for Newman Haas Racing and every other team in the pit lane. Our race summary after the halfway mark, Al Unser Jr. in the lead. And look at that green race average speed. This is our first caution flag of the day. We are averaging over 203 miles per hour. There are the cars out of the race. There is much about the Japanese culture that is new to the drivers and teams in the FedEx Championship Series. Different folks react in different ways. Jack Arute spoke with some of the drivers and filed this report.
You know, this trip halfway around the world has offered some of us the opportunity to taste some very new foods. Here in Japan and at the racetrack, well, you can sample from the food groups of sushi, traditional Japanese noodles, even pizza with corn and spaghetti. For the drivers, however, they've been able to sample some of Japan's finest cuisine, and that has left some of them wanting for more.
Mexican food, but I can't find it.
Sushi. It's the only way to fly.
Yeah, rice.
Sushi and sake, actually.
The rice curry's been very nice.
But some of the things they eat, you know, I don't eat it. So it's a little bit different. When I say I want a California roll, I say, what's that?
Rice pilaf's been very nice.
I don't like sushi, so I'm going to disappoint a lot of the Americans because I know they love sushi.
Anything with rice has gone down well.
Well, rice is nice, but the thing that I'll take back from Japan is the trip over. 14 hours on a jet, then a 1-hour train ride to downtown Tokyo, another train ride for another hour and 15 minutes, a 45-minute bus ride to get to a hotel that could pass for a phone booth, and finally be able to go to bed with this tiny little pillow. Sweet dreams, guys.
Aside from that, Jack, how have you enjoyed the trip thus far? I guess there's horses for courses when it comes to food and everything else about world travel. We'll be back to Japan in a moment.
Motegi is the lavish Honda Collection Hall, a museum celebrating Honda's 50th anniversary in motorsports. If motorcycles are your interest, you'll find everything from Honda's first motorized bicycle in 1946 to magnificent displays of every kind of motorcycle imaginable, over 300 altogether. For four-wheel fans, Honda's involvement in Formula One from 1963 to the early 90s is immaculately showcased. Also represented, Honda's first involvement with championship cars, Mike Groff's 1994 ride for Rahal Hogan Racing.
All right, thank you, Gary. Fans of Formula One recognize some of the late Ayrton Senna's Grand Prix machines, made famous with Honda. Christian Fittipaldi has made the walk back to the pits. Here's Gary.
Christian, no warning, I suspect, whatsoever on that engine going. Were you in danger when it let go of spinning or hitting the wall?
Oh yeah, I think when you have a situation like that the engine goes suddenly, you're always like a little bit in danger, especially if you lose some oil and then it goes on the tire. But luckily enough, nothing happened and I managed just to pull the car on the grass.
How about at the start of the race when the telemetry said it looked like you had a flat tire? That was not the case. Then in your anxiety to catch up, you ended up being penalized.
No, one thing has absolutely nothing to do with the other. I came back and they said I was penalized because I wasn't side by side with who I was supposed to be. But the matter of fact, JJ just didn't start. Like, he was way slow, and I had to keep up with the guy in front of me. I couldn't just lose like 5-6 seconds, and he was way slow starting the race.
Thank you.
There you see race leader Al Unser Jr., second place Adrian Fernandez. To clarify, Christian Fittipaldi started alongside Patrick Carpentier on row 10. JJ Leto started in the row in front of Christian, and in fact he didn't start directly in front of Christian. He was on the outside of row 9 alongside Bobby Rahal. That was a somewhat ragged start. Nevertheless, it's in the books, and we are ready to go green once again. The car on the left of your screen, Al Unser Jr., gets a great start in the Marlboro Penske Mercedes. To the line they come, and Scott Pruitt already trying to get by Greg Moore as they hit the stripe. Pruitt still trying to make up a lap as Al Unser Jr. rockets away early in the second half of the Budweiser 500. Once again, our pictures coming to us from NTV Television in Japan, the host broadcaster for this race. They have chosen to focus on the race leaders for much of the day. There is some good side-by-side racing going on further back. As we check our running order, look at those time gaps back from the lead. Dario Franchitti and Gilles de Ferran running 1/10 of a second apart. Right now, Adrian Fernandez is right up on Al Unser Jr.'s gearbox and looking down the inside.
I think for great racing, there's no further area to go than right here. This is a great dice for the lead.
A Penske for Al Unser Jr. and a Reynard chassis for Adrian Fernandez. You see the similarities in the nose with those drooping front wings. John Travis and his Penske design team took that aerodynamic styling cue from the Reynard. Now Fernandez down to the inside to retake the lead. and fairly easily. Remember, Fernandez was very quick at the beginning of this race with a full fuel load and fresh Firestone tires. And it looks like he's recaptured that speed as we get underway after a round of pit stops. Fernandez driving with that upset stomach that bothered him last night. Alonso Jr. simply driving with the weight of that 21 race drought behind him. 21 races between glimpses of the lead for Alonso Jr. But right now he is very competitive. Greg Moore, the blue and white car at the top of your screen, runs in third.
Bob, we talk about a 21 race drought for Alonso Jr. Just think how many drivers would like to lead a couple laps who have never done that. Forget 21 races.
A lot of racers would love to have those 31 race victories that Alonso Jr. has as well. We have yellow flags from the flag stand. And Alex Zanardi hard into the trackside wall. He's cleaned off the right side of that car, but he looks to be okay as he climbs out. Well, that was a big hit. So Alex Zanardi's day, which has not gone well from the first green flag here in the Budweiser 500, is now officially over.
And that's something that we haven't seen very much from Alex Zanardi. He doesn't make many mistakes.
Kart safety team on the scene. There's Chip Ganassi telling everyone within earshot that Alex has hit the fence.
Here he up. He's very high there and gets up in the marbles. Oh, he just got in there high, and once you get up in that gray area, up in those marbles, there's nothing you can do. You just can't turn the wheel. It just won't go. It will not change direction. It's just like you're on ice, and there's nothing you can do except ride it out.
Zanardi running back for the pits.
Doesn't look any worse for the accident, which is a very good sign.
He had not tested here previously. His teammate Jimmy Vasser did. Alex Zanardi picked up a nickname here. The Japanese call him Ida-10, faster than lightning. Well, it hasn't been that way today. There is Greg Moore pitting from third place. Forsyth team completes their work on the young Canadian, and out he goes. Not yet 23 years old, but a pole sitter and twice a race winner in the kart series. Greg Moore remains very much unaffected. No doubt that Greg Moore is all business. But away from the track, Greg enjoys meeting his fans and finds time to relax with fellow kart series drivers, among them Mad Max Pappas. The two have become good friends.
And it's fun, you know, we get along really, really well, but, you know, once the racing starts, you know.
How you doing, Greg? Yeah, you're live on Speedboard.
Like any friends, they stay in touch and are not above the occasional prank.
Got a very good friendship here and very, very special.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for dinner, Max.
Thanks, Max. I look forward to my next invitation to dinner. We'll continue with more of the Budweiser 500 from Motegi Town in Japan after this. Under our second caution of the day, brought out by a big crash involving reigning FedEx Championship Series titleist Alex Zanardi. He's with Gary Gerald.
Alex, can you tell us what happened? Did you get the wall down in turn 4?
Yeah, I was very close to the car in front of me, and coming out, I lost downforce in the front, kissed the wall. Didn't seem to be dramatic, so I went into one decent speed, and the suspension fell off while I was approaching the corner, so I just hit the wall again.
I know you were struggling trying to get the car. It was loose early. Had you made progress in that respect? Was it better?
Yeah, the car was getting better, and it's a shame because we would have got it to work towards the end of the race, but we won't be there.
Thank you.
We come back next one stronger.
All right.
Tough day for Alex Zanardi. Meanwhile, his teammate Jimmy Vasser has had plenty of time up on the lead. Vasser has some very hip interests away from the racetrack.
Hopefully this is something that'll grow in the future, and it's a great interest of mine, and these guys are great talent, and You'll see for yourself.
Vassar owns V12 Records. The very first band he signed was the Tacoma-based group Groove Bender, and for good reason. One member of the band is a lifelong fan.
This is Pat. He's my brother, and he's really the inspiration for me behind all this.
So Jimmy Vassar hopes to be #1, not only in the points, but also on the charts. Look for Groove Bender at your local CD store. While we have a moment, let's take a closer look now at this beautiful twin-ring Motegi circuit. Earlier, Gary Gerald filed this report.
The high-speed excitement of America-style oval track racing is being experienced for a first time in Japan today at what may well be the most elaborate motorsports facility you'll find anywhere in the world. In terms of foresight, planning, workmanship, and fan appeal, this is a gem here at Twin Ring Motegi, no question. But while the mile-and-a-half banked oval is the center of attention today, there is an abundance of other facilities to complete the entire complex. Consider a 2.8-mile road racing circuit built to full Grand Prix specifications. There are also 2 dirt oval tracks. You'll find a spectacular go-kart track, a complete driver training center. There's a 150-room hotel on the hill overlooking the oval, a Honda Fun Center full of interactive and virtual reality attractions, and a dazzling museum that features every significant racing machine throughout Honda's 50-year existence. Because of concerns relating to access to this area, the crowd is being held to 50,000 today, but there are plans to make this available to more than 130,000 fans in the immediate future. Honda officials estimate that they've spent approximately $400 million developing this motorsports complex, but there are many who believe that already the investment is well over $1 billion. It is impressive, to say the least.
Thanks, Gary. I'll second that opinion. The green flag is in the hands of kart flagman Jim Swintal. We'll get it after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. 128 of 201 here at the Budweiser 500. The Acura NSX safety car is off. Adrian Fernandez, the race leader, with Al Unser Jr. and Bobby Rahal in 2nd and 3rd as we prepare to go green. Fernandez on the power. Unser and Rahal right there with him. Then a gap back to Jimmy Vassar in 4th place as they come off turn 4 and head for the stripe. Unser Jr. right on Fernandez's rear wing.
CA stays out there a little bit high just to try to get that clean air over his wings. Doesn't want to get tucked up right behind him.
Despite the fact that this is a 1.5-mile racetrack, air turbulence has been a big factor in this race. Jimmy Vassar was predicting before qualifying was rained out that we might see speeds up around 220 miles an hour in qualifying because of the vortex effect created by cars going around and around. Now Fernandez able to draw away slightly from Little Al. And Unser drawing away from that man in the blue and white Miller Lite sponsored Reynard, Bobby Rahal. There you see the running order with 130 laps complete. 9 cars still on the lead lap. Fernandez continues to draw away over Unser and Rahal. Let's get more on Bobby's situation with Jack Arute in the pit lane.
Bobby Rahal has steadily worked his way up to now in the 3rd position. Rahal is extremely pleased with the performance of his car. He also feels that he is one of the drivers that will only have to make one more pit stop in this race. That stop is scheduled to come around lap 150. Rahal's comment to his crew during the last caution, boy, it feels good to be running up here.
No question about it. And Bobby Rahal's on the march. You see him in 3rd place. He started back in 17th. As you watch Adrian Fernandez, who has led most of the laps in the race to this point.
I think all those first 3 guys think it's fun to be up there. Adrian hadn't been up there for a while, and neither is Little Al or Bobby. Bobby's last really great performance was down there in Brazil last year, where he unfortunately ran out with just a lap or 2 to go.
So close to his first race victory since 1992. Bobby Rahal in his 17th and final season in the FedEx Championship Series. By far the most experienced driver with 246 starts under his belt. 247 if you count this first ever visit to Twin Ring Motegi.
And look at those two at the front. They're just starting to stretch it out over Bobby. Got a little lead over Jimmy Vassar.
More side-by-side racing going on further back in the pack, around 10th place. On board with Rahal. Hands nice and loose on the wheel.
Yeah, going down that back straightaway. That's why you hear that big lift off in there. Now into the front straightaway. Now you won't hear the throttle quite the same going in here. Listen to that. Almost flat out all the way around through turns 1 and 2.
There is Rahal. There's his progress through the field in the lower left corner of your screen. Bobby has established a charitable foundation this year to raise money throughout Rahal's last ride, which will be distributed to various charities where the FedEx Championship Series visits after the conclusion of the season. Fernandez, in the same colors he wore racing for the Tasman racing team in previous years, now with Patrick Racing, where today he is pretty much outperforming his teammate Scott Pruitt.
Bob, he's really started off the season outperforming Scott. He's qualified better than him. He's run a little bit stronger at both Miami and here.
There's Rahal, followed by Jimmy Vassar. See that Alex Barron is out of the race, so both of Dan Gurney's All-American Racers Toyota-powered machines are done.
Bob, I think we also got to give credit here for Ford. You know, the first 2 races of the season, they've been right at the front in practice and in the races. And of course, we've talked about the dominance of Mercedes and Honda over the last 2 years. These guys have done their homework over the winter and doing a great job.
Ford XD V8, 2.65 liters, turbocharged, basically a 3-year-old design. That Ford engine has been updated with new heads, a new bottom end, the crank, the conrods, bearings, pistons. Perhaps not as radical as the engine in that red and white machine for Al Unser Jr., the new Mercedes. 1/3 smaller than last year's engine, but every bit as powerful. They squeezed that engine down and tried to reduce the total number of parts, 4,000 parts in last year's Mercedes engine.
And one of the other pleasant surprises for me is to see Goodyear running up at the front. Of course, they won the first race. But all through this, we've seen a competitive Goodyear tire, and they seem to be pretty equal even in Firestone's backyard.
Checking the speeds at the line once again. Al Unser Jr. fastest on that last lap, but only slightly over Adrian Fernandez. Now Bobby Rahal clocks in at 210 miles an hour. That's as fast as we've seen anybody go yet today. Tony Kanaan back there in the second group of 5, having a great race, leading rookie in the field right now. But the story right now is Adrian Fernandez, Mexican driver, having a spectacular run here, almost certain to pick up the bonus point for leading the most laps in this race. In case you're wondering, because qualifying was washed out by rain, the grid was set by practice times on Thursday. As a result, our pole sitter Jimmy Vassar does not pick up the bonus point for pole, nor does he pick up bonus money from the Marlboro Pole Program, which awards $10,000 to the pole winner and a $15,000 rollover bonus if that pole winner can win the race. That hasn't happened for quite a while. So our next stop in Long Beach, California next Sunday will have a total bonus pool of $145,000 if the pole sitter can win the race. Our thanks to Omega Timing for timing and scoring this weekend. They have done a tremendous job. This is a new track for everybody, and the timers have had to go in there, install wiring, all of the machines that were offloaded off the FedEx Jumbo jets in Tokyo just a few days ago. There is Al Unser Jr. in that unique Penske Mercedes. Just ahead of him, Hideshi Matsuda in a Swift. Both Japanese drivers in this race still in the running, although they are running several laps down to the race leaders. What a day this could be for Al Unser Jr. His wife Shelley is here with him, as she often is when we travel the world with the FedEx Championship Series. Unser closing up now. slower traffic ahead of Adrian Fernandez.
Bob, I think you'll see that gap seesaw back and forth as they work their way through traffic. Sometimes they'll get held up and they'll lose a little bit, and then they'll get an advantage because they'll get through traffic faster than the second car.
Greg Moore has moved up a couple of positions. Dario Franchitti now the last car on the lead lap. Adrian Fernandez's wife Tanya is also here this weekend. Some of the drivers chose to spend time seeing the sights here on the Pacific Rim, while others have jetted in and will jet out immediately. Well, everyone will jet out immediately. We have a date in Long Beach next weekend on ESPN. There's Helio Castroneves, who had a fraught weekend 2 weeks ago in the season opener at Homestead, driving for Tony Bettenhausen and Emerson Fittipaldi. He had a huge crash in practice and crashed out of the race itself when he moved aside to let the race leaders come by. Now Fernandez pulls up on the only Lola chassis in the field, Arndt Meyer with the Project Kart team. To the line they come. Unser Jr. has dropped back slightly, while Fernandez continues to lead away. Let's get down to the pit lane and Gary Gerald.
A very anxious Roger Penske watching down here on the pit wall, wondering if this could be the day when he finally gets that 100th victory in championship car competition. His driver, Al Unser Jr., looking ahead to his next pit stop that should be coming up shortly, would be his final of the day. And of course, expediency in the pits might be able to get him out into the lead and a shot at that 100th win.
Most successful car owner in series history. There are the top six, all smiles now. But the collars are going to start getting tight here at Motegi. We'll be back. Lap 149 of 201 at the Budweiser 500. 52 laps to go. We're still a few laps from the opening of the final fuel window, but we have a car in the pit lane. Here's Jack Arute.
Scott Pruitt, he brings his car onto pit road. Now, they're checking because he has an engine problem. The engine is missing. Just about 10 laps ago, they had him go to full rich condition, and then the knob broke. So the engine has been running rich throughout the last 10 laps, and that may have soured the motor.
We saw that crewman telling the driver to shut the engine off. And that is bad news for Scott Pruitt. Other cars in the pit lane. Still a little bit early. These cars will go about 45 laps on a tank of fuel, so they're going to want to get about another 10 laps in before they stop. Adrian Fernandez chased by Al Unser Jr. running first and second.
With a fuel stop coming, that's not exactly the guy you want in your mirrors. You know the Penske team's really good. You got to make sure that when you do that stop, you get in and out cleanly and hopefully back in front, because toward the end of the race with a hungry Al Unser Jr., he's going to be a tough guy to pass.
So while Adrian Fernandez's teammate Scott Pruitt's race may be over, Fernandez soldiers on, looking for his second career victory. The first, of course, came 2 seasons ago in the tragic street race at Toronto, Canada, where the victory by Fernandez was completely overshadowed by the tragic accident that took the life of Jeff Krosnoff. Coming up to lap, Hiro Matsushita. 153 laps complete now. And much of the outcome of this race is in the hands of the pit crews, with 1 stop to go for all of the front-running cars. I would imagine about now some of those crewmen are looking each other in the eye, knowing what they have to do in the next few laps.
Those guys are so experienced, though, and they've done it so many times. And most of them like the pressure because they know they can give an advantage to their driver if they can get him out in front of the other driver.
Did you ever give your crew a pep talk in your years of racing before you made a critical pit stop?
I never had to. The pit crews were very good at that. I was also afraid that they might give me a pep talk before a critical move.
A shake of the head from Scott Pruitt, whose race is in fact done. Now here comes Bobby Rahal for his final stop. Crew goes to work. Ray Hall sitting calmly in the cockpit. Fueler looking around to make sure all of the tires are on. And Ray Hall is away.
The hard part there, Bob, those fuel stops at the end take a little bit longer because don't forget those tanks are gravity fed. So there's less fuel in them. That's the last bit of fuel they're going to get. So there's less to force the fuel through the hose.
On the speed limiter, here comes Jimmy Vasser, who has led today. He heads for the Ganassi team pits. Gary Gerald is there.
Jimmy Vasser coming in and hitting the marks for his final stop. They're going to take a little front wing out to change the handling characteristics. There's the change. They've stalled the engine, however. Vasser having to wait. At the back of the car, the scramble is underway to engage the starter. Oh, this is a big disappointment for Jimmy Vasser. He'd been solidly in the top 5. Nothing's responding thus far. Cranking, grinding, waiting for the engine to catch. It's not happening for Vasser. Oh my, Jimmy Vasser now wondering what the problem is. They still haven't been able to solve it. And he hopes to get up and challenge in the final 50 laps. May have just disappeared as the engine broke as Vasser smoked the tires.
Now that is huge. You saw the meter ticking up there in the left-hand corner of the screen. It was up to almost 50 seconds. Al Unser Jr., those guys will do it in 12 seconds, 13 seconds. And when you do a 25-second lap, that's almost 2 laps around this place. That's huge at this point of the race.
Back down to the pit lane.
It should be the final stop for Al Unser Jr. It seems like an eternity since he's won. In reality, it's only been a couple of seasons. Roger Penske wondering, could this be the 100th victory today? This should be the final service. He has the fuel, he has the tires, he's gone.
Adrian Fernandez has watched Al Unser Jr. make his pit stop, and now the leader has pushed the fuel window to where this will be the final stop for the Pat Patrick Racing Team and the Mexican Fernandez. 4 tires go on, and most importantly, make sure that a full 35 gallons of fuel are in. He pops the car in gear, and he is off and away with a very quick stop.
Well, the Patrick Racing Team was concerned about their stops last year. They worked during the off-season to muscle everybody up, get their steps down, and make the choreography of quick pit stops a part of their racing arsenal. Adrian Fernandez back out there looking for a win. Paul Tracy, the race leader right now, but more pit stops are coming. Stay with us. Coming up tonight on ABC, Chevy Chase and Jack Palance star in the network premiere of the comedy Cops and Robertsons at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, followed by ABC News Saturday night tonight. Paul Tracy, the leader of the inaugural Budweiser 500. The first time he's been in the lead since the Milwaukee round last year in the FedEx Championship Series, shortly after the end of his 3-in-a-row winning streak, driving for Penske Racing. He's had to adjust to a completely new car, engine, and tire combination, moving from the Penske Mercedes on Goodyear rubber to a Reynard chassis with a Honda engine and Firestone tires.
Bob, let's not forget, it's also an adjustment to a new team. Even though a very good professional team, it's still a switch from Penske. You just got to get to know the players, know how they work, how you work, get the language down, and it takes some time to adjust.
And the differences between drivers can be crucial. Paul Tracy has been struggling with a terminal push in the car that he has been unable to work out. Meanwhile, his teammate Dario Franchitti seems to be able to work fairly well, even though for him too it is a new team and a new combination. Team Green is in the pit lane. This is the team that took Jacques Villeneuve to the series championship just a few short seasons ago. And now Tracy pits. Down to 60 miles an hour, which must seem interminably slow to these drivers, coming down from 228 miles an hour on the fastest part of the racetrack. Final service for Paul Tracy. Oh, the crew anxious to get him back out.
Watch the clock in the upper left-hand corner. That's just ticking away. Those are the seconds.
Took a while to get all of the fuel in that he's going to need to run green to the checkered flag.
That was about 10 seconds slower than we've seen the leaders do their pit stops, or their last pit stop, with the fuel load lightened.
Enormous duct on the back of that Reynard. An adjustment by Team Green. That briefly gave the lead to Gilles de Ferran, who is now pitting himself, as you watch Adrian Fernandez, who with that stop moves up into second place as Greg Moore assumes the lead. And we continue our final round of stops among the leading cars. We'll find out who the players are for the run to the checkered flag when all the stops are finished. Fernandez will pick up the bonus point for leading the most laps in the race thus far. He doesn't have to run down Moore at this point because he knows the Canadian is still going to make his final stop.
Yes, and the great thing about radio communications is he's aware of that. They keep him steady, keep him at the same pace. He's not panicking, thinking, oh, I'm in second place. He's aware that Greg Moore still has to make a stop.
Mark Blundell tucks into the draft behind Adrian Fernandez. Blundell and his teammate Mauricio Gugelmin, we haven't talked about them much in this race. They opted to go, the Pac West team, with last year's Reynard chassis, last year's Mercedes engine, and the Firestone tires for the first few races of this season, hoping reliability would give them a leg up in the championship. Thus far, it appears it hasn't worked too well for them.
No, Mercedes made some good moves. They were worried about the engine reliability because of the new electronics package, but Ilmor has gone back to the old package until they get all the bugs sorted out, so that kind of threw that out the window, and they decided to go with the package that they thought would give them the reliability and points in the early races, and this has not proved to be the case.
It is a high-stakes game as you watch the race leader Greg Moore. Across the line he comes. Check the fuel window. Yellow flag lap shortly after Moore's last stop. In fact, he pitted under the yellow. The rest of that green bar is his green flag run. He is now past his fuel window. He will have to stop soon, and now he heads for the pit entrance. So this will be the last stop among the leading cars. We'll see how quickly the Forsyth crew gets the pride of British Columbia, Canada, back out onto the racetrack.
Now, a lot of people at home might wonder, why wait that long? Why stay out there and take a chance of something happening like what happened to Michael Andretti? What they're hoping for, stretch it as far as they can, hope that a yellow comes out. They can pit under a yellow and maybe gain some track position.
Keep an eye on the clock. Moore keeping the revs up. Oh, very quick stop, 11.3 seconds. And because he pitted right at the end of the pit lane, he crosses the end of the speed limit line and is back up to speed quickly.
Now, Bob, the folks at home might wonder, why is he in that particular pit and some in other pits? The reason is you go from your qualifying position at the last race. So Greg Moore was on the pole at Miami. He gets the choice of which pit position he would like at the next race.
Coming up fast behind Max Pappas. That was close. As Adrian Fernandez got right up behind the Toyota-powered Reynard of Max Pappas before sliding to the outside and making the pass. Now it's all in the hands of the driver. Good look at Fernandez. Off to perhaps the best start of his career in the FedEx Championship Series. Hunter Jr. in second, 1.4 seconds back. Bobby Rahal still in third. Greg Moore fourth. And Paul Tracy, the fifth and final car on the lead lap. .26 laps remaining. And now every noise will be in the ears of Adrian Fernandez. You saw him take a quick wipe of his visor there. Clear track in front of him. There's the top 12. We'll take a break and return for more of the inaugural Budweiser 500 from Japan. Stay right there. Laps at the inaugural Budweiser 500, round 2 of the FedEx Championship Series for 1998. From Motegi Town in Japan, the race leader, Adrian Fernandez, leading Al Unser Jr. And time is beginning to run out for Unser Jr. to try to overhaul Fernandez. We mentioned earlier, 21 races since Al Unser Jr. led until today, 35 races since the bearer of one of the most famous names in American racing has been to victory lane.
And Adrian looks awful strong at this stage. I mean, he's pulled out a nice, comfortable lead. You know his adrenaline's pumping, even though he hasn't felt well. He's put that behind him, and he's thinking about his first oval win and, of course, his second career victory.
The all new and quite radical Penske Champ Car chassis. There's an example of the Reynard. 3 chassis, make that 4 chassis involved. Lola, Reynard, Penske, and Swift in Champ Car racing. But the cars, although they may look visually similar, are very different. Reynard has dominated the series in recent years. This car, basically an evolution of the design that has won time and again in the FedEx Championship Series. The Penske, however, a very different departure. No common parts whatsoever with the Penskes of previous years. And the Swift, just a 2-year-old design with a lot of changes this year to fix some of the shortcomings, particularly on the road courses from last year. Then, of course, Lola, which was simply lost that year. A company with a storied tradition in all forms of racing could not find the handle last year. They are back with a new chassis this year, but only one team is running it. Checking the speeds at the line. Adrian Fernandez, second to Al Unser Jr., who posts the first lap at 211 miles an hour plus that we've seen here today.
And Bob, what's happening there, he's really keeping the pressure on Adrian. I think that's an advantage for Adrian because it makes him focus on what he's got to do. He's got to stay attentive. He's got to look at the track. But look how close Al Unser Jr. is there. He's really got to stay sharp and keep hustling the car. And I think that keeps him from making a mistake by lapsing into a false sense of security.
And you can be sure that both of these drivers are being kept appraised of the other situation. Roger Penske himself talks with Al Unser Jr. Jim McGee, a pit strategist without peer, talking with Adrian Fernandez.
And look at Junior, he's really closing in. Al Unser Jr. is not what you want to see in your mirrors at this stage of the race. With your second oval, second victory and possibly your first oval win in sight. And here's Al Jr. with over 30 wins and 2 championships.
20 laps to go as Adrian Fernandez looks out the front of his cockpit thinking, okay, here comes Junior, traffic up ahead, which line do I take?
As much as he's trying to focus in front of him, he keeps glancing in those mirrors too. He wants to make sure that Al Jr. isn't closing up as too much.
6 cars on the lead lap. 19 to go. Helio Castroneves and the Alumax-sponsored Bettenhausen Reynard on the left. Fernandez has the measure of him. Al Unser Jr. will try to get there. Can he pass? No, he can't before they dive into the corner. Castroneves got himself in trouble at Homestead 2 weeks ago by moving aside for the leaders. He touched the wall and was out of the race.
That was a big help to Adrian there because it just held off Al Jr. just enough that he had to come out of the throttle a little bit and give Adrian a little bit of breathing space.
What a drive for Adrian Fernandez in his first 2 races with Pat Patrick Racing. Into the car formerly occupied by Raoul Boesel. More traffic ahead. There's the bright yellow Lola of German driver Arndt Meyer.
Adrian's aware, that, of course, that advantage can just as quickly go away in traffic as the advantage can be had in traffic.
Now Hiro Matsushita. Both of the top 2 drivers dealing with traffic, and once again Fernandez manages to make the pass before he's in the corner. Unser Jr. has to dodge to the outside of Matsushita. 16 laps to go. A duel at an average speed of about 210 miles per hour here at Twin Ring Motegi. Oh, and a big crash. Someone has hit the wall. Bobby Rahal. A massive crash that has sheared the right side off the car. A small fire at the back of the wreckage.
That'll be an oil fire. That's just an oil line that's broken. It's not any fuel.
You see him moving in the cockpit. Rahal was running in third and cutting some extremely quick laps as the kart safety team locks up the brakes in their rush to the aid of Bobby Rahal.
Goes right in there. He'll ask the driver if he's got any problems. If he's conscious, he'll make sure that everything's okay. Talk to him before they try to move anything in case he is hurt. These guys travel with the series. Everybody knows everybody. The drivers are very comfortable with them. They're regular guys that we see every weekend and experts at everything that they do.
They drill for just this sort of emergency week after week. See the crew looking at the back of the car, making sure the fire situation is stabilized. Dr. Stephen Olvey helping to extract Bobby Rahal, who apparently gave them the word that nothing felt broken. He could feel his hands and feet, wiggle his toes and fingers. So they unbuckled him and let him slide out.
You see on the driver's uniforms those little epaulets that are on the top of the shoulders. That right there is the reason why they make you have those on there. So if they have to pull you, they have something that they can grab a hold of.
Saw the crew under Tim Cindrich looking at their monitors. They're seeing the same picture you are, so they know that Bobby is out, limping on that right leg slightly. But other than perhaps a little bit dazed, it looks like Bobby Rahal is all right.
Well, and this is not the experience that Bobby wants to have in his last year of racing. This is, he was running so strong in third position. This is not the way he wanted to end this race.
Slight smile there on the face of Dr. Stephen Olvey, I suspect means that Bobby is okay. Let's take another look at what happened.
Okay, Bobby, this is turn 3 into turn 4. You heard him downshift. Now come down the main straightaway. We'll hear him go up a gear. Changed up. This is almost wide open. Entering 1, now 2. Oh, and he just loses it a little bit. Saw a puff of smoke out of the right-hand side of the car, and he just loses. It just goes up a little bit high, and at that speed, there's nothing you can do. You're running so close to the walls anyway. Got in there, tore the whole right side, spun it around, the air got under it, and spun him over.
Very similar to the accident suffered earlier by Alex Zanardi. Next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific on ABC Sports, coverage of the World Figure Skating Championships presented by MasterCard continues with an evening of special performances on the ice featuring the medalists from this weekend's championships. It's next Thursday night on ABC Sports. There's your top 6. We'll be back. The checkered flag awaits. Motegi, but strategy is still important. Here's Jack Arute.
Not surprising, there's a little war of words going on down on pit road and out on the racetrack. Leader Adrian Fernandez and his team are trying to keep the pace as quick as possible to run off just as many laps under caution as they can, hoping to inch closer to the checkered flag. Meanwhile, the man running in second, Al Unser Jr., and his chief man on pit road, that being Roger Penske, Roger keeps going to the kart officials and say, please slow down the pace car. Please have Fernandez slow the pace. He desperately wants to see this race go back to green.
Well, the pace is set by the safety car at a previously established limit, but Danny Sullivan, I'll bet some of these 55,000 fans would take Al Unser Jr.'s side. They want to see green.
Everybody in the stands and everybody in that field is with Al Unser Jr. except for Adrian and his crew. Believe me, when you're in that situation, you want that yellow to last as long as possible so you don't have to go back to green racing.
The signal from the flag stand is 1 lap to go, and we will be back under green with the laps running down here in the first race at Twin Ring Motegi. There is Adrian Fernandez, cruising along as quickly as he can.
And he knows that this restart is make it or break it. He can lose the race if he messes up this restart and Al Jr. gets fined, because then he's going to have a very tough time to get back past Al Jr.
Here comes the safety car. Quickly before we go green, let's get a final thought from Gary Gerald in the pit lane.
So it'll be 5 laps to go. Roger Penske on the radio to Unser Jr. a moment ago said, cinch your belts tight and go get him. And Al responded, that's a big 10-4. Looking for Penske's 100th. We'll see if it can unfold in these final 5 laps.
Thank you, Gary. The new third-place runner is Gilles de Ferran in the Valvoline-sponsored car for Walker Racing. But this story is all about these two men. Here comes Al Unser Jr. looking around the outside, but he can't get it done. Perhaps can't find clean air behind Adrian Fernandez.
Well, Bob, Adrian got the right line. He took the inside. That's the place you want to be. It was the best line. He's going to get a great shot off there. He wants to get through 3 and 4 and try to get a little gap between himself and Al Unser Jr.
Right down on the white line through those corners. 4 laps to go now for Adrian Fernandez. 4 laps for Al Unser Jr. to use all of his considerable talents to try to run down the race leader and end his own 35-race victory drought.
Remember one thing, Al Jr. has not only have to catch him, he's then got to pass him. And with this few laps left to go, that's going to be a tough assignment.
Especially when you have a car like Fernandez does that can run right down there on the white line. You're not going to be able to go low. If Al Unser Jr. is going to pass him, it's going to have to be high unless Fernandez makes a mistake or perhaps gets bottled up in slower traffic. 3 laps to go. There is Gilles de Ferran on the outside of Paul Tracy, moves him right up by the wall. That was close. Back to the front, Fernandez, 2 laps to go now, 3 miles from his second victory and his first on an oval in the FedEx Championship.
I got to wonder if Adrian's even breathing at this stage in that car.
Turns 3 and 4 onto the front straightaway, flashing by the pits where his team is willing him on. 1 lap to go. The white flag waves over Adrian Fernandez. And now the clock is working against Al Unser Jr. 2 weeks ago in the season opener at Homestead, Florida, a Ford engine beat a Mercedes with a Honda engine in third. Today, the Ford engine behind Adrian Fernandez will apparently beat Al Unser Jr.'s Mercedes. We have a Honda in Gilles de Ferran's car in third. Victory for Adrian Fernandez and Patrick Racing, his first oval triumph. And to come back from those flu symptoms during the night, all of the illness, as Al Unser Jr. comes alongside to salute a comrade in arms. What a drive by Adrian Fernandez.
And what a drive from Al Unser Jr. He started back in the middle of the field, and he had not been a threat, and he ends up right there racing it right till the end.
Absolutely. Al Unser Jr. was a threat at Homestead 2 weeks ago till he had gearbox problems that took him out of the race. And this podium will be very welcome indeed. It's not the same as a victory, especially to an Unser, but I think we will see a very happy Al Unser Jr. when he climbs from his car. As for Adrian Fernandez, well, who knows how much the Mexican will be celebrating. A huge moment in his career, bringing victory to his new team in only his second race. We have lots of time to talk with some of the major players in this drama. The celebration has begun down at the start-finish straightaway. We'll be back to share it with you from Japan. At Twin Ring Motegi in Japan, an historic day for open-wheeled racing and a tremendous battle to finish between Al Unser Jr. and our winner, Adrian Fernandez, standing by with Jack Arute.
Well, Adrian Fernandez, congratulations. How close was it at the end? You did not want to see it go back to green.
No, because my car had a lot of push, and I knew Junior was strong in 3 and 4. So I wanted to finish in yellow, but at the end, when I started pulling away from him, I felt that this was mine. I just wanted to make no mistakes, and this win is for my crew, the Patrick Racing, John Worm, my guys. I mean, did a terrific job. We fixed a lot of the problems that we had in Homestead, and we came back very strong.
Now, we understand that you also suffered from a stomach illness throughout most of the evening.
Actually, I want to get sick again. All night, I was vomiting and, losing a lot of fluids, and I rested a lot, and, Dr. Olby helped me this time, and I felt great on the race. I have a great race car. I'm happy for Mexico, for Tecate Quaker State. I mean, just a great win first time in Japan.
Adrian, let's talk about what a win means to a new teammate. I mean, you're new to the Pat Patrick team, and only second race out, you take the team to victory lane. What does that mean?
Well, it's a big difference from where I was last year. Not in terms of just the team, but, you know, in the package. And, you know, Patrick Racing just wants to win. And I prepared this time more than ever, and my guys are 100% behind me. They believe in myself, and it's just a great combination. I'm very happy to be with a first-class operation.
How about the tires? There were an awful lot of Firestone people here. They were feeling the pressure.
They were the best, I tell you. As long as the runs were in their tires, the better they were getting. So Firestone, the best ones, and 4-engine, they did a great job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
No question about it. Winning is the cure for a lot of ills. Now, Gary Gerald has hauled Al Unser Jr. out of the back of that pickup truck. Let's see if he's a happy man.
Al Unser Jr., what does it feel like to be back knocking on the door, coming so close to winning again in this tough circuit?
Well, it feels good. You know, the old Marlboro Team Penske did a great job today. We fell just that little bit of short, you know. I want to congratulate Adrian. He did a wonderful job. And my guys, you know, they gave me a beautiful car today, and it went the 500 Ks, and we're really proud of that. And God dang, I led a few laps today, and I haven't done that in over a year, so.
It was like the old days in the sprint cars on that restart with 5 laps to go. It looked like you ran right up under his wing trying to get a jump on him.
Yeah, we tried to make a move there, and it was going to be my only shot at him, and but, you know, it was just, he knew what was going on, and so, you know, he got us going into one there, and it was all over at that point.
So close to winning that 100th for Roger. Great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, baby. No question about it. Al Unser Jr. is a happy man, even with a second-place finish. Of course, for others, the day was longer. One of those was Michael Andretti. Here's Gary.
Michael Andretti, I know it had to have been just agonizing, that long crawl to get back here after you ran out of fuel. How tough was it to control your emotions once you got back on the racetrack?
No, once you get going again, it's no problem. It's a shame that this Kmart Helen car was quick. And I think we would have I think we had the field handle for sure. So it was very disappointing. But on the good side is it was good. Again, repeated, and, you know, we'll get him at Long Beach.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, 13 cars failed to finish the race, the last of which was Bobby Rahal. Let's get an update on his situation.
Well, Bobby Rahal, it's awful nice to be able to stand here and check on your well-being after just a hellacious ride. Do you have any inkling of what may have happened to cause this?
I'm so disappointed because the car was on rails. My engineer did a wonderful job this week, and, you know, we drove through the pack, had great stops, and the car was, as I say, it was on rails through 1 and 2, and I mean, all of a sudden it just went up towards it, got into the marbles, and it was gone. And you know, it's thank God we've got such safe cars, you know, in kart. Because I guess it's spectacular. You know, when you're in it, you don't really see much of it, but...
Trust me, it was spectacular.
But just very disappointing. You know, Homestead was not a good race for us. We didn't have a good handle on the car, but here, the car was awesome. I mean, it was just flat, fantastic. And so I'm very disappointed tonight that, you know, having such a good car in line for a podium finish and then have this happen really was very disappointing.
Good to see Bobby Rahal up and around. Here's a look at the unofficial results. Adrian Fernandez, his second career win, one each from Ford, Mercedes, and Honda on the podium, as there was 2 weeks ago, but in 3 different cars from what we saw in Homestead. That is competition. Of the 30 starters, 17 finished, including both of our Japanese drivers in this race, Hiro Matsushita and Hideshi Matsuda. In the FedEx Championship standings, after 2 rounds, we have a tie at the top between Adrian Fernandez and Greg Moore. 19 drivers have scored points in the 2 races run thus far this year. In the Manufacturers Championship, Ford is now 2 for 2 in 1998. They lead Mercedes, Honda, and Toyota. Our next race will be next Sunday from Long Beach, California, the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. You'll see it live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Until then, I'm Bob Barsha. For Jack Arute, Danny Sullivan, and Gary Gerald. We'll take you back to our Wide World of Sports studio in New York and join our host John Saunders after a look at some of the key moments of this race. Until next week in Long Beach, so long, everyone.